Mr. Grant was a man many admired from a distance. He was tall, well-dressed, and always busy with meetings, flights, and phone calls that never seemed to end. People in the city called him successful, powerful, even lucky. But behind the tall, glass windows of his mansion, there was a quieter story, one that no one saw except the walls of his home. Inside that mansion lived his only child, Daniel, a boy of 8 years. Daniel was not like other children. He struggled to speak clearly. His steps were unsteady, and he needed special care that demanded patience and gentle attention. The doctors had explained his condition in long words, but in simple truth, Daniel needed more love, more time, and more understanding than most children. Unfortunately, Mr. Grant was not around much to give him these things. His work consumed him, and while he did love his son deeply, he often felt helpless. He did not know how to reach Daniel or how to connect with him. To fill the gap, he employed many house staff, nurses, caretakers, and maids, yet most of them did their duties, as if it were only a job. They followed schedules, gave meals, and watched over the boy, but none seemed to look at Daniel as a child with a heart. That changed the day Angela walked into the house. Angela was different from the start. She was not dressed in expensive clothes, and she spoke in a soft voice that carried warmth. She had known hardship in her life, but those struggles had given her a strength that was quiet and kind. When she came for the interview, other staff whispered that she looked too simple, too ordinary. Yet when she saw Daniel sitting in the corner of the room playing with a block he kept dropping, she walked straight over to him. She bent down so her eyes met his, and she picked up the block. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said gently, placing it back in his little hand. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled. It was the first time in weeks anyone in the household had seen Daniel smile. At a stranger, Mr. Grant had noticed. Though he did not say much during the interview, he approved Angela that very day. Something in him trusted her, though he could not explain why. Perhaps it was because she did not treat his son as if he were fragile glass. She treated him like a child who deserved joy. The days passed, and Angela settled into her role. She woke up early every morning, humming softly as she prepared Daniel's clothes. She spoke to him as if he understood every word, even though his responses were slow and quiet. She never rushed him, never grew impatient when he struggled to button his shirt or finish his food. Instead, she encouraged him, clapping gently when he succeeded in small things most would overlook. At first, the other staff laughed quietly among themselves. "She treats him like a prince," one said. "As if he understands everything," another added. But Angela ignored the whispers. She had learned in her own life that people often judge what they do not understand. Her patience soon began to change Daniel. Slowly, he began to trust her. When she entered the room, his eyes would brighten. When he was afraid of the dark hallways at night, he would hold her hand tightly, and she would whisper stories that calmed him. When his words stumbled, she never corrected him harshly. She simply listened until he finished. For Mr. Grant, life continued at the same fast pace. Business dinners, flights, and endless calls still filled his schedule. He rarely had time to notice the small changes in his son. But one evening, when he returned home late, he heard laughter. For a moment, he stopped walking. The sound was strange because his home was usually quiet, filled with soft footsteps and low conversations, but never laughter. He followed the sound to the playroom and stood by the door. Inside, he saw Angela sitting cross-legged on the carpet with Daniel in her lap. She was telling him a story, her hands moving in the air like little actors. Daniel was giggling, his eyes wide with joy. Mr. Grant's chest tightened. It had been so long since he had seen his son laugh that he almost did not recognize the sound. He stood there silently, watching. He did not enter the room, but in that moment, something stirred inside him. He began to wonder if perhaps Angela had brought something into his home that money could not buy. From that day on, Angela's bond with Daniel grew stronger. She learned his little habits, the way he tapped his fingers when nervous, the songs that made him calm, the foods that upset his stomach. She learned to read his moods through his eyes, and she knew when he was happy or when he was tired. To Daniel, she became more than a maid. She became a safe place, a person he trusted completely. Others in the house began to notice too. The cook would shake her head with a smile, saying, "I've never seen the boy eat so well." The gardener once remarked, "He runs to her like she's his mother," though some staff still carried envy or whispered doubts. No one could deny the change in Daniel's spirit. Mr. Grant, however, tried to stay distant. He told himself that he was too busy, that his work was for the future, that Angela's presence was simply helpful. Yet late at night, when he lay in his large, quiet room, he sometimes wondered what it would feel like to sit beside his son and hear him laugh the way he did with Angela. He wondered if he had failed in ways no amount of money could fix, but those were thoughts he buried quickly, convincing himself there would be time later. Little did he know, the turning point was drawing closer, the day when he would return, home early, not by plan but by chance, and witness something that would shock him, change him, and force him to look at his son and at Angela in a completely new light. Mr. Grant's life was a calendar of schedules, meetings, and responsibilities. Rarely did anything happen outside his carefully arranged plans. But one quiet Thursday afternoon, something unexpected happened. His important business meeting was canceled at the last moment. With nothing else demanding his attention, he decided to return home earlier than usual. It was unusual for him to arrive before sunset. As his car rolled into the long driveway, the mansion looked different under the golden evening light. He walked inside, greeted by the sound of faint voices echoing down the hall. Normally, the house was too quiet, filled only with the soft shuffle of staff moving from one duty to another. Today, however, he heard a raised voice, sharp and impatient. Mr. Grant frowned. He followed the sound toward the living room. Inside, he saw a scene that made him freeze. One of the older housemaids was standing over Daniel, her voice stern, her movements harsh. Daniel had dropped a cup of juice, and the liquid had spilled across the floor. The maid's face was twisted with frustration as she scolded the boy. "Why can't you be more careful?" she snapped, her tone sharp. Daniel, frightened and confused, backed away, his small hands trembling. Before Mr. Grant could step forward, another figure moved quickly. It was Angela. She rushed to Daniel's side and stood protectively in front of him. Her voice was firm, but calm as she faced the maid. "He didn't mean to spill it," she said softly yet strongly. "He's just a child. Don't raise your voice at him." The older maid looked startled. Her eyes widened as if she could not believe someone of lower rank in the household would speak to her this way. "You don't tell me how to do my work," she retorted, her tone defensive, but Angela did not move away. She placed her hand gently on Daniel's shoulder, keeping him close. "I will tell you this," she replied quietly. "No one in this house has the right to frighten him. He is not at fault for being who he is. He deserves kindness, not anger." Daniel clung to Angela, his small fingers holding tightly onto her dress. His eyes, wide with fear moments ago, now softened with trust as he looked up at her. From the doorway, Mr. Grant stood frozen. The scene played out before him like a story he could not look away from. The sight of his son hiding behind Angela, the tone of her voice filled with courage and care, the sharp contrast between the two women. It stirred something inside him he had long ignored. Finally, he stepped into the room. His sudden presence made the older maid fall silent at once. She lowered her eyes, realizing she had been caught raising her voice in front of the master of the house. "Sir, she began nervously, but Mr. Grant raised his hand. "Enough," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it that silenced the room. The maid bowed quickly and excused herself, leaving hurriedly. For a moment, only three remained: Mr. Grant, Angela, and Daniel. Angela turned slightly, expecting perhaps that she would be scolded for speaking so boldly in front of her employer. But instead of anger, Mr. Grant's eyes were fixed on his son. Daniel was holding tightly to Angela, his head buried against her arm. Mr. Grant walked closer, his footsteps slow, his expression unreadable. He crouched slightly to meet Daniel's level. The boy peeked out, his eyes cautious as if unsure how his father would react. Then something unexpected happened. Mr. Grant reached out and gently brushed a lock of hair from his son's forehead. "It's all right," he said softly, words he rarely spoke in such a gentle tone. "You're safe." Daniel blinked at him, surprised, before slowly nodding. But even then, his little hand did not let go of Angela's dress. Mr. Grant stood, up straight again, his eyes meeting Angela's. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then he spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "Thank you," he said simply. Angela lowered her head respectfully. "I only did what was right," she replied. That night, Mr. Grant could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. As he sat in his study, his papers and business reports lay forgotten on the desk. His mind kept returning to the image of Angela shielding Daniel with such courage. He thought of the other staff, who often treated his son with impatience, completing their tasks without care. None of them had ever spoken up. None of them had ever protected Daniel the way she had. He realized he had almost missed it. If he had stayed at his meeting, he would never have known how much his son depended on Angela. He would never have seen the way she stood up for him. The next morning, Mr. Grant observed more closely. At breakfast, he watched as Angela guided Daniel to his seat, helping him with his spoon, speaking to him as though every small effort was an achievement worth celebrating. Later in the garden, he noticed how she encouraged Daniel to walk along the path, holding his hand but allowing him to take steps on his own. She clapped softly when he succeeded, and the boy's face lit up with joy. For the first time in years, Mr. Grant began to pay attention. He realized that Angela was not just caring for his son's needs. She was giving him something he himself had failed to give: confidence, love, and safety. One afternoon, as Mr. Grant walked past the playroom, he stopped at the doorway again. Inside, Daniel was trying to build a tower of blocks. His hands were clumsy, and the tower fell more than once. Normally, this would frustrate him, and he would push the blocks aside. But Angela sat patiently by his side, encouraging him with every try. "You can do it, Daniel. Try again. I know you can." Daniel's eyes lit up with determination. Slowly, carefully, he placed one block over another. When the tower finally stood tall, he clapped his hands with delight. Angela laughed and hugged him warmly. "See? I told you, you are stronger than you think." Mr. Grant felt something stir deep inside him. Pride, perhaps. Or maybe guilt. He realized that his son was capable of more than he had ever believed. All this time, he had accepted the doctor's words as limits, but Angela saw possibilities. She treated Daniel not as a burden, but as a child with potential, and Daniel responded to that belief. The more Mr. Grant watched, the more he realized how much his son depended on Angela. It was not just about meals and clothes. She had become his shield, his teacher, and his comfort. She had given him a voice when others dismissed him. But this realization also left Mr. Grant unsettled. A question echoed in his mind late at night. Why had it taken a stranger to give his son the love and protection he should have given himself? He could no longer ignore it. He knew that something was changing. The woman he had hired as a maid was becoming more than just a caretaker. She was becoming the person who protected his son's heart, and in doing so, she was quietly changing his own. From that day onward, Mr. Grant could no longer look at his household in the same way. He had always believed that money could solve problems, and that hiring capable staff was enough to care for his son. But watching Angela, he began to understand that Daniel needed more than routines and schedules. He needed someone who truly saw him. Angela continued her work quietly, never asking for praise. She did not demand attention or acknowledgement. She simply did what was right for Daniel, every single day. She noticed when he was tired, when he was anxious, and when he was curious. She learned his habits, his little gestures, and the small ways he communicated before words could form. Slowly, she began to teach him things that the doctors had said might be impossible. It started with small steps. Angela introduced gentle exercises to help Daniel strengthen his muscles. At first, he resisted. He wanted to sit quietly, content, to watch the world around him rather than participate. But Angela's patience never wavered. She knelt beside him, encouraging him with soft words and gentle hands. "Just one step," she said. "I will be right here." And step by step, Daniel began to move. His legs, once shaky, gained strength. His small hands learned to grip and hold with confidence. Each accomplishment was celebrated, no matter how small, and Angela's joy was contagious. Daniel began to smile more often, laugh more freely, and even speak a few words that were clear and proud. Mr. Grant noticed these changes and felt a mixture of emotions. He was proud, yes, but also guilty. He realized he had underestimated his son and overestimated his own role. He had believed that providing money and comfort was enough, but now he saw the deeper truth. Love, attention, and belief in his child were far more important than any luxury or possession. One afternoon, Mr. Grant returned home earlier than usual once again. The house was quiet, but the playroom was filled with the soft hum of activity. Angela was sitting on the carpet, carefully showing Daniel how to stack blocks higher than he had ever done before. The boy's face was radiant with concentration, and he carefully balanced each block, refusing to let them fall. Mr. Grant watched silently from the doorway. He was struck by the bond between them. Angela's voice was calm and encouraging, and Daniel responded to her words with focus and determination. It was a sight that touched him deeply. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to care for someone completely, without expecting anything in return. Days turned into weeks, and the changes in Daniel became more remarkable. He began to attempt small conversations using words he had never spoken before. Angela praised every effort, no matter how imperfect, and gently guided him to improve. She created little games that helped him learn and grow, turning every moment into an opportunity for progress. The household staff began to notice the difference as well. The cook would smile as Daniel tried to help prepare meals. The gardener would compliment his small achievements in the garden. Even the older maid who had once scolded him seemed to change, quietly observing the patience and love Angela brought to her work. Yet not everyone was pleased. Some staff whispered that Angela was too close to the boy, that she spoke too boldly and overstepped her role. They worried that her influence was growing, that she was becoming more than just a maid. These murmurs reached Mr. Grant's ears, but he chose to observe before reacting. He wanted to understand why Angela's presence was so powerful. So, one evening, he decided to spend time in the playroom without announcing himself. He watched as Angela encouraged Daniel to try drawing, to attempt puzzles, to read aloud simple words. Each time he struggled, she offered gentle guidance and reassurance. Each time he succeeded, she clapped her hands and celebrated with genuine joy. Daniel responded to her love and encouragement in ways that no one else had managed. He laughed freely, spoke proudly, and even initiated small acts of affection, like offering Angela a flower from the garden or hugging her arm. Mr. Grant felt his heart swell with emotion. He had never seen such trust and connection in his son before. Later that night, Mr. Grant sat alone in his study, reflecting on what he had witnessed. He realized that Angela's influence was not just about helping Daniel grow. It was about teaching him to believe in himself. She had shown him that he was capable, that he deserved patience, love, and respect. And in doing so, she had shown Mr. Grant what it truly meant to be a father. He knew he had to change. His son needed more than a distant father who measured love in wealth and time. He needed a father who was present, who listened, and who supported him. And perhaps, Mr. Grant thought quietly, he also needed to trust Angela completely, to allow her to continue guiding his son in the ways he himself had struggled to understand. Angela, meanwhile, continued her work without expecting recognition. She saw Daniel not as a challenge, but as a child full of potential. She celebrated every milestone, every small victory, and every smile. She taught him through patience and encouragement, never pushing too hard, never showing frustration. Her love for him was steady, unwavering, and sincere. One day, Mr. Grant noticed something remarkable. Daniel had learned to feed himself without spilling his drink. something that had been impossible weeks before. Angela had guided him, yes, but the boy had tried again and again until he succeeded. The pride on her face was clear, but even more striking was the pride in Daniel's own eyes. He had accomplished something he once thought he could not. This moment marked a turning point. Mr. Grant realized that Angela's influence went far beyond daily care. She was shaping his son's confidence, teaching him resilience, and nurturing a sense of independence. She was showing him that mistakes were not failures but opportunities to try again. Over time, Mr. Grant began to participate more. He would occasionally join Angela and Daniel in their activities, hesitant at first, unsure how to connect. But with Angela's gentle guidance, he learned to interact with his son in ways that Daniel could understand. He discovered the joy of watching Daniel succeed, of sharing in his laughter, and of offering encouragement instead of correction. Angela noticed the change in Mr. Grant as well. She did not comment on it, but she adjusted her approach, inviting him to be present without forcing him. Slowly, he became part of their small, growing world, a world built on patience, love, and trust. By the end of Part 3, Mr. Grant had come to a profound realization. True care and protection were not measured by wealth, power, or status. They were measured by presence, understanding, and dedication. And Angela, in her quiet, unwavering way, had shown him the meaning of all these things. Over the following months, the atmosphere in the mansion transformed. The tension that once existed among the staff had softened, and a quiet respect for Angela's dedication began to grow. She had earned her place not through words or authority, but through unwavering care and patience. Every action she took was for Daniel's benefit, and gradually, even the staff who had once doubted her began to notice the changes in the boy. Daniel's progress was remarkable. He had learned to walk steadily without assistance, to speak in clear sentences, and even to express his feelings with confidence. Each milestone brought a wave of joy that resonated through the house. Angela celebrated every small victory with him, laughing at his jokes, clapping for his achievements, and gently encouraging him whenever he struggled. Mr. Grant watched all of this with a mixture of pride, awe, and humility. He realized that he had spent years trying to solve problems with money and authority, never fully understanding that what Daniel truly needed was love, attention, and belief. Angela had shown him the meaning of true care, and he had begun to emulate her patience and kindness in ways he had never imagined possible. One morning, Daniel ran into the study, a bright smile on his face, holding a drawing he had made. "Look, Papa," he exclaimed, showing the picture of a sunny garden with two figures holding hands. Mr. Grant looked at it closely and saw the figures, one smaller, one larger, holding hands as they walked along a path lined with flowers. He recognized Angela and Daniel, smiling in the sunlight she had drawn so carefully. Mr. Grant's eyes filled with tears. He realized in that moment that Daniel's confidence, creativity, and joy were all nurtured by Angela's care. He bent down to hug his son tightly. "This is wonderful, Daniel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud of you." Daniel beamed, then turned to Angela. "Look, Angela, you're in my picture too." Angela knelt beside him, smiling warmly. "I am honored, Daniel," she said softly. "But you did all the work. This is your accomplishment." The scene brought a profound sense of gratitude and understanding to Mr. Grant. He saw clearly that Angela's influence went far beyond daily care. She had taught his son to believe in himself, to persevere, and to find joy in small achievements. She had created a safe space where Daniel could grow, thrive, and discover his potential. With this realization, Mr. Grant made another important decision. He called a meeting with the household staff to address the lingering whispers and doubts. Standing tall, he spoke firmly, but kindly. "Angela is more than a caretaker for my son. She is his protector, his teacher, and a guiding presence in his life. I trust her completely, and I expect every one of you to respect that. Daniel's well-being comes first, and anyone who does not understand this will have to reconsider their role here." The staff listened quietly. Some were nervous, others surprised, but no one dared argue. The words carried the weight of authority, but also of sincerity. Angela, standing a little behind Daniel, felt a quiet warmth in her chest. She did not need recognition or praise, but she understood that her dedication was finally acknowledged. As days turned into weeks, the household settled into a new rhythm. Angela continued to guide Daniel with patience and love. Mr. Grant became more involved, often sitting with his son during meals, playing games, and helping with lessons. The bond between father and son grew stronger, nurtured by Angela's gentle influence. One afternoon, Daniel attempted to write a short story on his own. His letters were shaky and some words were misspelled, but he persevered. Angela guided him gently, offering encouragement and praise at each step. Mr. Grant watched silently, amazed at the determination his son displayed. When Daniel finally finished, he held up the paper proudly. "I did it. I wrote a story," he exclaimed. Angela clapped softly. "I knew you could, Daniel," she said. Mr. Grant smiled broadly, feeling a sense of pride he had never experienced before. He bent down to hug Daniel. "This is wonderful," he said. "You've worked so hard and you should be proud of yourself." The bond between the three of them grew deeper with every passing day. Angela became a part of their family, not just a caretaker. She guided Daniel with love, patience, and wisdom, and Mr. Grant learned from her example. He discovered that being a father was not just about providing material things, but about being present, offering encouragement, and celebrating every small victory. As time passed, Daniel's progress became more visible to everyone. He participated in family activities, explored new interests, and even began to help Angela with small tasks, learning responsibility and cooperation. His laughter filled the house, a sound that had once been rare, and his confidence grew with each passing day. Mr. Grant noticed another remarkable change. His own heart had transformed. He no longer measured success by business achievements alone. Instead, he began to understand that true wealth lay in the love, trust, and connection he shared with his son. Angela had shown him that being present, patient, and supportive was the greatest gift he could give. One evening, the three of them sat together in the garden. Daniel was laughing as he chased a butterfly, Angela watching with a gentle smile, and Mr. Grant sitting nearby, content and reflective. For the first time in years, the mansion felt like a home filled with warmth, joy, and love rather than a place defined by status and duty. Mr. Grant took a deep breath, feeling a sense of gratitude for Angela's unwavering dedication. She had not only protected his son, but had transformed their lives. Through her patience, love, and belief in Daniel's potential, she had created a foundation for growth and happiness that would last a lifetime. He stood and approached Angela, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "You have given Daniel so much more than I ever could have imagined, and you have given me a lesson I will never forget." Angela smiled softly. "Sir, I only did what I believed was right," she said. "Daniel is a wonderful boy, and he deserved someone to believe in him." "You have believed in him," Mr. Grant said, "and because of you, he is thriving. I cannot thank you enough." Angela nodded quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had never sought recognition or reward, but seeing Daniel happy, confident, and growing gave her a sense of purpose that no words could fully capture. That night, as Daniel lay in bed, he whispered to Angela, "Thank you for helping me, Angela. I love you." Her heart swelled with emotion. "I love you too, Daniel," she replied softly, "and I will always be here for you." Mr. Grant, watching from the doorway, felt tears welling up in his eyes. He realized that the love, trust, and bond shared between Angela and Daniel were more powerful than anything he had ever experienced. He stepped into the room and joined them, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "I love you too, Daniel," he said, his voice full of warmth, "and I will always be here for you." In that moment, the three of them sat together, connected by trust, love, and understanding. The house that had once been filled with silence, tension, and distance was now alive with laughter, growth, and emotional warmth. Angela had become an indispensable part of their lives, not only protecting Daniel, but shaping a family dynamic built on love and patience. From that day forward, the mansion was a place of joy, learning, and togetherness. Daniel continued to grow, achieving milestones that had once seemed impossible. Mr. Grant learned the true meaning of fatherhood, recognizing that love, patience, and presence mattered far more than wealth or authority. And Angela, through her quiet courage and unwavering care, had transformed the lives of both father and son, leaving a lasting impact that would never be forgotten. Together, they discovered that true happiness and success were not measured by money or status, but by the love, support, and trust shared between those who cared deeply for one another. And in that realization, they found a life richer than any fortune, one filled with connection, growth, and the enduring power of love. Even as Daniel grew stronger, more confident, and happier under Angela's care, not everyone in the house was pleased with the way things were changing. Some of the older staff members began whispering behind Angela's back. They said she was too close to the boy, that she spoke too boldly, and that she was overstepping her role. They worried that she was becoming more like a mother than a maid, and the idea made them uncomfortable. Angela, as always, remained calm and focused on Daniel. She ignored the whispers and continued her work. But Mr. Grant could sense the tension building. One evening, as he returned home earlier than usual, he overheard some of the staff talking quietly in the kitchen. "She thinks she's the boss of the boy," one of the maids said. "She's taking too many liberties. What will the master think?" another added. Mr. Grant felt a pang of frustration. For weeks he had been observing Angela and Daniel, seeing the progress that had been impossible before she arrived. And now, others were questioning her dedication, her methods, and even her intentions. He knew he had to act. Later that night, he called Angela to his study. She entered quietly, her head lowered respectfully, and waited for him to speak. "Angela," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I've heard some of the things people are saying about you, about how you interact with Daniel." Angela looked at him steadily. "Sir, I only want what is best for Daniel," she said softly. "I do not care what others think. I am only concerned with him." Mr. Grant studied her for a long moment. He could see the sincerity in her eyes. He could see that her actions were not about attention or praise, but about love and care. "I understand," he said finally. "And I want you to know that I trust you completely. I know you have his best interests at heart." Angela lowered her head, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you, sir. That means more than words can say." Even with Mr. Grant's support, Angela faced challenges. The other staff members continued to whisper, sometimes trying to undermine her efforts. They would criticize small things like the way she encouraged Daniel to speak, or how she helped him walk in the garden. At times, it seemed almost impossible to keep peace in the household. But Angela never lost her patience. She remained steady and kind, refusing to let negativity affect her work. She knew that Daniel needed stability, love, and protection above all else, and she focused on giving him that, day after day. One afternoon, a small incident brought everything to a head. Daniel had been practicing walking with his new walking frame, something Angela had been helping him with for weeks. He had made remarkable progress, and Angela was gently encouraging him, her hands steady on his shoulders. Suddenly, one of the older maids walked into the room, frowning. "He shouldn't be doing this," she said sharply. "You're pushing him too hard. What if he falls?" Angela looked at her calmly. "He is learning. He is stronger than you think. I am here to support him. He needs encouragement, not fear." "The cow." Maid's frown deepened. "You have no right to decide what is best for him," she snapped. Angela stood her ground. "I am responsible for him while I am here, and I will do what is right for him. If you cannot understand that, then you need to step aside." The tension in the room was thick. Daniel, sensing the conflict, froze, unsure of what to do. His eyes darted between the two women, searching for safety. Just then, Mr. Grant entered the room. He had been in his study, finishing some work, but something made him check on Daniel. The sight before him made his heart tighten. Angela standing, firm to protect his son, Daniel clinging to her for reassurance, and the maid looking upset. He realized that this was a moment that required his action. "Enough," he said firmly, his voice carrying authority that made the room fall silent. "Angela is doing what is best for Daniel. I trust her completely. That is enough for everyone in this house to know." The older maid lowered her eyes and left without another word. Daniel, still holding on to Angela's dress, looked up at his father. Mr. Grant bent down, smiling gently. "See? You're safe," he said. Angela exhaled softly, relief washing over her face. She knew the conflict was not entirely over, but she had the support of the most important person in Daniel's life. Over the next few days, the household slowly adjusted. Some staff continued to grumble quietly, but they no longer challenged Angela's decisions openly. Mr. Grant began to take a more active role, checking in on Daniel regularly, asking questions about his progress, and even participating in small exercises. For Daniel, the change was magical. He saw that both Angela and his father were on the same side, supporting him, encouraging him, and celebrating his progress. His confidence grew even more, and he began attempting new tasks with courage he had never shown before. Angela continued to guide him gently, teaching him new skills every day. She introduced simple lessons about patience, problem-solving, and communication. She celebrated every success, no matter how small, and reassured him whenever he faltered. With her guidance and Mr. Grant's presence, Daniel began to achieve milestones that everyone had once thought were impossible. One evening, after a particularly successful day, Daniel ran to Angela and hugged her tightly. "I did it," he exclaimed, his small voice filled with pride. Angela laughed softly, hugging him back. "Yes, you did, Daniel. I knew you could." Mr. Grant watched quietly from the doorway, his eyes shining with emotion. He had never seen his son so happy, so proud of himself. And he realized that the love, patience, and courage Angela showed every day had made this possible. The next morning, Mr. Grant made a decision. He called Angela to his office and sat her down. "Angela," he said, "I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you have done for Daniel. You have gone above and beyond, and I trust you completely. I want you to continue caring for him in every way you see fit. You are part of this family now." Angela's eyes widened, and for a moment, she did not speak. "Sir," she said softly, "I only want what is best for Daniel. That is all I have ever wanted." "I know," Mr. Grant replied with a small smile, "and that is why I trust you. I want you to know that you have my full support, no matter what anyone else says." From that day forward, Angela's role in the household changed. She was no longer just a maid. She was Daniel's protector, teacher, and closest friend. She had earned the trust of the boy, the respect of Mr. Grant, and even the quiet acknowledgement of the other staff. Daniel flourished under this support. He began to speak more clearly, walk more confidently, and engage in activities that had once been impossible. Every small success was celebrated, and every struggle was met with patience and love. Mr. Grant also grew in ways he had never expected. He learned to be present, to listen, and to support his son. He realized that true care was not measured by wealth or authority, but by time, attention, and understanding. Angela had taught him this lesson without ever intending to, simply by doing what was right for Daniel. And so, even with challenges, whispers, and occasional conflicts, the household began to thrive. Angela continued her work with quiet strength. Daniel continued to grow and achieve, and Mr. Grant learned what it truly meant to be a father. Together, they created a world where love, patience, and understanding were more important than rules, schedules, or social status.